Greetings, all. It is Monday, March 2nd. Man, there's been a lot going on in markets. Boy, what a call we had last week on Friday about the Iran situation. For those that are new here, I generally just go to X and YouTube before I've been monetized for quite some time, but I'm branching out on some new platforms using Restream. I normally use StreamYard, so that's going to enable me to get to some more platforms, get in front of more people. Generally do a lot of macro analysis, talk about trades. I've been doing a lot with gold and silver recently, also with Bitcoin and Ethereum, mostly shorts recently because crypto's been down. And then looking at where the meta is in the market, basically. So recently that's been AI agents, and then digging into DePIN specifically, which is really where I've made the most of my money with my investments. Finding hidden gems. Generally looking for ones with immense upside. So have found quite a few 100Xs there over the years, and kind of like a holistic approach to everything. So excited to get on more platforms. I've been working with some larger accounts, and they've been watching my streams. They're like, man, we got to get you on more platforms. So I'm working pretty closely with them on getting more exposure. So I want to kick things off with what we talked about last week on Friday. And that, of course, was the Iran situation. So on Friday, we had inflation reports coming super hot. Of course, hot inflation means less rate cuts. Okay, so that was an obvious short for me on crypto. I longed gold and silver at that point. Those went pretty parabolic, actually. Some really nice moves. And then towards the end of my stream, I talked about, I have it in this video here on X, but talked about how Polymarket, if you pay attention to prediction markets, which you should, talked about how the odds of us going into Iran and having an attack there were surging, and took a little bit of time there at the end of the stream to talk about ways I was positioning for that. Obviously, longing gold and silver there, had some shorts on crypto, and looking at buying the dip on certain assets. That's exactly what we ended up seeing. But if you look here, I want to call this out on Polymarket. We saw that the odds were surging. So you start to see a lot of these things start to get baked in, especially as we were looking further out. And these are the ones that I covered down here, I think. We had relatively high chance. You look at March 31st, we were sitting at over a 60% chance there. And if you look further out in the year, I mean, there was an expectation that this was going to happen, right? We are at like 70%. So a lot of this was already baked into the market to an extent. Okay, so that's generally how these events work. That's why the prediction markets are so important, to see what sentiment is, but to see how much is baked in. That's why a lot of times when the event actually happens, you see a sell-off or you see the opposite of what you would expect, because people had already been preparing for it. You see this buy the new rumor, sell the news event. In the case of Bitcoin, though, we saw a massive sell-off. The attack started really 2 a.m. Central Time on Saturday morning, and we saw a huge sell-off in crypto, which was to be expected. We saw a huge surge in gold and silver, and we're seeing kind of a little bit of a correction in both. We're seeing a little bit of a rally in crypto today, and I want to break down all the details and why this is taking place. Some of the trades I had open that I did end up closing. I do have one trade open right now, so I'm going to walk you through all that. But I would say the big story here really has to do with the fact that we have less uncertainty. Coming into this, let me go up into the full screen here. Bear with me. This is my new streaming service. I've been using StreamYards for the last couple of years. So here we go. So a lot less uncertainty. Going into, we didn't know if China and Russia were going to join in, with Iran. Obviously, that seems like it's not going to happen. Okay. The other part of this is, Trump came out and announced that we had taken out like 50 of their top military leaders in the first hour with that original strike. It sounds like we're way ahead of schedule. So this is not going to be drawn out as long as maybe they thought originally. So that's removing uncertainty. I think the big story here, though, is oil, and in particular China. Okay, and what that means for the U.S., what that means for U.S. oil producers, and ultimately the DXY, or the dollar index, which is of course the strength of the dollar against a basket of other global currencies. And we saw this news start to come out about the Strait of Hormuz. This is actually, let me pull this up real quick. This is actually just breaking right now. If I can, there we go. That this is being shut down. There are rumors this is going to be shut down last week, but it sounds like right now they're saying that they are going to, they being Iran, is going to take down any ships that they're traveling through the strait. And I did a segment on this last year, but this is a big deal. Here's the video actually that I posted. And 20% of global oil supply goes through the strait. This is a huge deal. The vast majority of that's going to Asia. So this has really a heavy impact on China in particular. And if you look here, at this map, we're talking about this strait right here. So you have Oman on one side, you have Iran up here, and then most of the oil out of the Middle East is coming through that strait. So this being shut down is a huge deal. Obviously, it's going to push oil prices up. That's what we've seen. I'm going to talk about one oil stock in particular that the chart looks great, and I think this bodes well for U.S. oil producers. So I'm going to walk through that a little bit. China has been buying oil from both Iran. Let me make this full screen here again. From Iran and from Venezuela, both sanctioned countries. So they were doing this outside of SWIFT. SWIFT is the payment system that uses US dollars, right? The global payment system. Because we have sanctions on those countries, they were, partaking in that trade outside of the US dollar system and kind of buying it off the black market, if you will. They were doing so at a hefty discount because obviously, if you're Iran or you're Venezuela and you're trying to sell this and you have to do it on the black market, you're not going to be able to charge top dollar, right? You're trying to get rid of this behind the scenes. Cutting off that oil supply for China is a big deal because roughly 17% of their oil, if you look at these charts here, roughly 17% of their oil was coming from those two sources. So you have Iran and Venezuela. If you look down a little bit further, you'll see how much they are importing. So cutting off that oil supply means they've got to get the oil somewhere else. Russia is also sanctioned right now. They've been getting a lot of oil from Russia, but they are having to compete with India there. And the other part of this, though, is that if we're cutting off oil from Venezuela and Iran, that means that oil trade is no longer being done outside of the US dollar. That means that more oil trade is going to be done with US dollars within the normal petrodollar system. That's good for US dollars. You saw what happened a couple weeks ago it was a Friday, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Russia reports came out that Russia was going to start using US dollars for energy trade again. That had a huge impact on a sell-off in gold and silver and a strengthening of the DXY index, which they are generally have an inverse relationship. Same kind of deal here. I think there's going to be a lot more trade, oil trade in particular, done in US dollars now. The other part of this is, there are rumors that India, while they've been buying oil from Russia and we're trying to cut that off, they were also reselling that to Europe is the rumor that's been going around. But the bottom line is if this 17% is cut off and China is looking to buy more oil from Russia, what does that mean for India? Well, I would say there's a good chance they're going to start buying more oil from the U.S. And that bodes very well for not only the DXY index, but U.S. oil producers. And here's what I'm talking about with DXY. Again, this is a measure of the dollar against other currencies in the world. You see this big surge up here. Again, I think part of that is, like I said, that more trades can be done in the U.S. dollar again. That's a really big deal. But also, we don't have this uncertainty hanging over the whole, situation with Iran that we've been kind of, building up to for the last few weeks. So this is largely why silver's selling off, largely why we're seeing a little bit of a sell in gold. Not much. Gold's still staying pretty strong. And that is why last week, I'd entered these trades on gold and silver. I mentioned I took some profits here on Saturday. I closed the rest of these positions at CME last night because I didn't know what to expect this morning. There's just a lot going on in markets because there's obviously the Iran situation, which we see what's happening with DXY, but there's a couple other things that came out today. In particular, I'm going to cover here in a minute. to talk about why I think Bitcoin and crypto is rallying to an extent. So I exited those trades in a substantial profit. We've been absolutely crushing it on the gold and silver trades, man. Using the macro events to trade in gold and silver has been one of the most profitable things I've been doing over the last couple of months. Just crushing it left and right. Now, looking at gold real quick in the charts, that 5,100 level was absolutely key. That was where we started the long position, and actually a little bit under that, because on the news that on that Russia news, right? That we started. What was it? The Russia news? I'm trying to think. Russia news I shorted. We had the inflation news come out. It was the inflation news. The inflation news. Hot inflation, debasement trade, right? That's people are exiting the US dollar. So this thing has been up. Silver, on the other hand, had a major correction today. I think this might be short-lived, but we had broken up above 92.50, which is a key level. And then really this sell-off today, I think some of this as well was people had been building these positions for weeks, knowing that this conflict was going to happen. I think that once it finally happened, people took profits. So I think there's a combination of both. Now, as far as energy goes, and like right now, I don't have any gold and silver trades open. I kind of wish I'd left my gold long open, but I'm out of those for right now, letting the dust settle a bit. But a couple of energy trades I'm looking at. Now, this is one that I've covered quite a bit. This is XLE. So this is an ETF that has a lot of energy stocks in it. It has pretty high exposure to Chevron, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But this is one that's been crushing it. Obviously, we had broken above an old back here, this all-time high back from like decades ago. Actually, let me go to the weekly view real quick. Reload this real quick. Here we go. So this is one that's right here. So we broke this all-time high from freaking back in 2014. We've been off to the races ever since. So XLE is an interesting one, but then I found this one. This is basically XLE on a 2x leverage. Okay. And I think the energy trade is going to continue doing well, y'all. I mean, you have to think the energy topic, just with these AI data centers and the electric grid issues we're seeing, I think energy trades are going to continue doing well. They obviously did very well last year, but the one in particular I'm looking at here is Chevron. Okay. As I mentioned, I think that all of this that's taking place is really good for US oil producers. This chart looks pretty good. We have been in an uptrend. You look at the daily here. We are at an all-time high, just sitting at it right now, back from 2023. So I believe if we do break above this, we could see a lot of upside looking forward. Of course, the opposite is true. If we see a sweep here, then we could reject hard and come back down. But there's just so many catalysts right now for U.S. oil producers. You have the news about the Strait of Hormuz being shut down right now. To me, this is something that, I did get some exposure to today. And if we do break above and show strength, I'll probably get more exposure tomorrow. But I'm looking at different ways to play the energy trade. Obviously, last year I talked about this a lot. Got into some solar stocks, got into natural gas, got really heavily into nuclear. And I think nuclear has a very bright future, really from a global perspective. So those are the plays I'm looking at right now. I don't have anything in gold and silver, but if we see something actionable again as the dust settles here, I will re-enter some trades there. But really looking at the energy play. Now, looking at crypto, we're seeing a little bit of a rally here. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we saw that this supply management ISM, these numbers came in today, and it looks like we're still in an expansionary territory. Now, down a little bit from last month. But of course, this is a really good indicator of whether we're in expansionary territory or contraction when it comes to the economy. If you look at this chart here, this is a really big deal. If you pay attention to Raul Paul, he talks about this a lot. But this is 2 months in a row now, we're up over 50. Over 50 is expansionary, below 50 is in contraction. And if you look at the last 5 years, well, let's just look at the last 10 years. This is correlated with our normal market cycles in crypto. So you'll notice here when we were expanding and contracting, okay, same thing here. These are the last two market cycles. And the one thing that Raoul Pal talks about a lot is we've been in contraction this whole time in this market cycle. Once we get into expansionary territory, his view is that we will see crypto take off again. We'll see a bull run, an extended bull run. So having 2 months in a row over 50 is really huge. I mean, we haven't seen this since the end of 2022. Back when they started raising rates, started quantitative tightening. So we are, for the first time since then in 4 years, seeing expansionary territory in the economy. So this could be a really big deal, something to certainly keep an eye on. I think this news dropped today. So I think that's part of what we're seeing with rallies in the crypto markets. The other big thing, though, of course, is the Clarity Act. And we are seeing this up to a 72% chance. So quite a climb here. And I'm seeing reports, there's White House officials saying that we're getting very close. So this would be a massive catalyst. This would bring a lot of sideline capital into crypto, would also cut down on some of the BS we've been seeing with market manipulation. So this would be obviously huge. This is something that's been in the works for years. Okay. So I think if this does happen, and hopefully it does, and most people are saying by June, I think this could be a massive catalyst and potentially put us back into an uptrend here. But we're not there yet. And that is, my main sentiment right now is that it's great to see a rally, but I'm not sold that we are, out of this range. And I've talked about this range a lot, but to me, we're still chopping. We're still consolidating, and we don't know yet which way things are going to go. There's still, to me, a lot of weakness in the markets. If you break below the things I'm looking at, if we break below 60K, I think there's a lot more downside. 72,000, though, we break out of this downtrend. The key level I'm looking at is 74,000, because this is the level that we broke after the election back in 2024 to create this big uptrend that we're seeing here. This is also the level we retested on Liberation Day when the tariffs were first announced. So two key levels tied to macro events, really important macro events. And of course, this is what we broke below and then saw just like the massive sell-off. So to me, I don't really see anything too actionable here. I do have a small short open, I will say, just because we've been sweeping this level at like $69,420. We continue to sweep that level over and over again. I did open up a short slightly below 70,000, just because, in my opinion, there's still a lot of uncertainty with the overall situation with Iran. Yes, it's great to see the Clarity Act headline, but until it's done, like, whatever, man, like, we need to see that get across the finish line. In the ISM, that's great news. And I think that's what the rally is from. But my overall sentiment is still bearish right now for crypto until we see otherwise in the charts. So that is why I have a small short. I have an invalidation stop loss slightly above 70,000. So if we do break above finally, then I'll close at a slight loss. But right now it's very much in profit. And then really 72,000 is that key level I'm looking for me to become bullish again. Ethereum, not much actionable here, man, either. Like, we are just kind of chopping in this range. So I think it'll follow Bitcoin, frankly. So I'm looking at Bitcoin as the main indicator there. And the big concern I have more than anything is with the oil prices surging, you have to consider what that means for inflation. Very high correlation. It makes sense. Oil is like needed for manufacturing, it's needed for shipping. It's in most of the products in our lives. So there's a very strong correlation with oil prices and inflation. If inflation starts surging back up again, what does that mean? Well, it means the Fed can't cut rates. We're already seeing this hit in the prediction markets. We saw the inflation come in hot on Friday. I only expect that to continue, with this situation in the Middle East right now. If this gets drawn out, that means less rate cuts. That's bad for risk on assets like crypto. So that, to me, is still a major threat. So I just have a hard time being bullish. I think anyone that's super bullish right now, it's hopium, man. Like, you'd have to explain why to change my mind. But at the same time, again, like, if we see things flip in the charts, Like, it doesn't really matter what we think. We need to see what the market is telling us, right? Doesn't mean you can't position for things ahead of time, of course, like we did on Friday, looking at the prediction markets and got into that Bitcoin and silver trade, hit 80% and 100% on those trades. That was paying attention, having your pulse in the market. But in this range, though, in Bitcoin, it's kind of gross at the moment. So that is where things stand on the macro update. Now, I do want to talk about where the alpha is right now. And of course, that is in the AI agents. So a little background here. So if you're new, again, most of the time, oops, let me bring this back down here. Most of the time I am on X. There we go. Boom. X and YouTube. Okay. Those are where I'm monetized, where, most of my community members are. Now on Restream, I'm going to TikTok, Twitch, and Rumble as well. I've done a little bit with Rumble, but if you're new, I go through the macro events just like we did, talk about those trades. A lot of focus on energy right now. Gold, silver have been great ways to trade, both long and shorting. And then the majors, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and broader crypto news. Then getting into the alpha, which right now is AI agents. Found quite a few of these that have done 20Xs over the last month. And then dialing in on DePIN, which is more of a, spot buying for longer term holding. And I'm going to break through some of those here in a minute. But what we're seeing with these AI agents is wild, man. There are real devs building these on chain, and they're running businesses, generating revenue, and that revenue is then being used to buy and burn their token. So a couple of these that have had major pullbacks, and this is something I mentioned on Friday, if we saw an Iran conflict, I would expect a major pullback on these. This is exactly what we've seen. So not surprising. And number one I want to cover is Felix. So this is, again, built by a well-known dev. So it's in, this is kind of the recipe, right? It's listed in here. So you can go to the devs page as well. But this thing has been generating revenue. You can see they have a dashboard here. Hitting $10,000 a day in most days, sometimes a little bit under. But obviously that's big. I mean, that has led to them burning a lot of tokens out of supply. We have seen a little bit of a pullback. This thing got all the way down to under 3 million last night. Obviously, we are seeing quite a bounce back now. If we reload this page here, 10% in the last hour, 14% in the last 24 hours. This is why on Friday I was like, look, these more, smaller cap, higher risk plays, when we see an event like, unrest in the Middle East, you see a big pullback. Those are the times to accumulate. I added to my bags on that pullback. And this is why, right? You see them bounce back, and they bounce back pretty hard generally. The other one is Kelly Claude. This, again, same recipe. This guy has like 250,000 followers. I was in ETH Denver last week. This one was mentioned by Jesse Pollock, who works with Base. Obviously, he's got a huge following. So this thing is building apps. So again, it's an AI agent building applications, launching them, generating revenue. Also worth noting, they have now 10 sub-agents working. Kelly Claude has 10 sub-agents working for him, each armed with unique skills, testing gates, and learnings. It's built out a marketing team now. So this is an AI agent running this business. Of course, Austin is the one that kind of set this thing up. And now it kind of helps it along its way. But it started to generate real revenue. So that's a big deal. Kelly Claude dropped all the way down to under 6 million last night. And I didn't get it exactly at the bottom at 5.2 here, but I did get under 6 million added to the bag there. Obviously up 37% in the last 24 hours. So we're seeing that bounce back as well. This thing actually earlier today got all the way back up over $11 million. So roughly a doubling, up 100% at one point from yesterday. And it has been all the way up to 16 million market cap. So I did add to this bag here. The next one's Juno. I've been covering this one quite a bit. Same type of concept, but instead of applications, it's launching AI agents for running businesses. Same type of deal. This guy has connections with the other two devs as well. This Tom Osman. And we're seeing here that they have crossed $12,000 in total revenue. So revenue is flowing into this one as well. Obviously, very important. What are we seeing here? This thing's now, just since I freaking started my stream, up to 1.7 million now. So another one that's up 20% in the last 30 minutes. So taking advantage of these dips, we saw actually a huge seller come in. This thing wicked down to like 820,000. So it's up double since then, since that pullback. So huge there as well. I have one that my buddy Tyler just sent me. Riseout's coming on. So I haven't had a chance to do a ton of due diligence on this one, but same type of deal here. We got Amber. This is another AI agent generating revenue based on the limited research I've done. We've got, this is the builder. All these builders have at least like 30,000 or 20,000 followers. They're doxed. That's the big thing. So this is another one that meets all the criteria, sitting at a $453,000 market cap. If you catch these early, that's where you get the big returns. I caught Felix at 300,000. That thing got up to 6 million a few days ago. That was a 20x in a month, right? So finding these things early, like if this thing gets to a $5 million market cap, that's a 10x, right? So as the flywheel hits, as they generate more and more revenue, and their businesses expand out with these AI agents, the more revenue, the more buys and burns taking place to put upward pressure on the price of the token. That's the whole deal. Two other honorable mentions I'll call out here. Osabot, obviously, this is a MetaMask dev, MetaMask, the crypto wallet, sitting at a $471,000 market cap. This did get as high as 2.5 million. So obviously way down from where it's been from that recent pullback. One last one is Atlas Forge. This one is a little bit more speculative, man. We'll see how it works out. Super low cap. So, let's have a small bag of this one to see where it goes. But I would just say Felix, Kelly Claude, and Juno are definitely my highest conviction plays. I think there's still potentially a tremendous amount of upside there from where we currently are. And that is where a lot of the mind share is right now on these AI agents. So something I would at least get on your radar and be watching, because I think we're going to see a lot more of that as the year wears on. Let's talk about 375 AI. So we saw 375 AI launched. One second. Let me go to my X page and just make sure. I wonder if this thing posted or not. So I haven't used Restream before. Oh, yeah. Cool. Let me reshare. If you're watching, repost if you would. Okay. So 375 AI, they are collecting real world data. They've got cameras across billboards in all major cities. They're also with their app now. They've launched this project with Target, basically, and they have their beta right now. And I went ahead and participated in this over the weekend. Went into some Targets. You just take pictures of Kind bars on the shelf. So they have a partnership right now with some pretty big brands, and they're testing this out. So the brands, as it turns out, pay a lot of money to have people go out and verify that the product's on shelves. So this saves them money, but it also allows 375 AI to generate revenue. And then you as a participant earn tokens in their project. The whole deal here is that as revenue comes into the project, a percentage of that revenue is going and buying tokens in the open market to give utility to the tokens that you're holding, kind of giving you ownership in the company, like just owning stock on chain, essentially. So this is a fantastic project. Harry, interestingly, posted this video earlier. I want to play this. I wonder, hopefully the volume comes through for you guys. Let me know if it does. But he posted this. This is, of course, Larry Ellison with Oracle talking about the importance of data. Okay, so again, oh, you can't hear the volume. Sheesh. Let me see if I can share it in a different manner that will play the volume. Maybe it's not tab. Maybe I have to do window. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Allow. That's why. Okay, we got it figured out. I'm using Restream for the first time. Here we go. Let me know now if this plays.
As I said earlier, these AI models are trained on publicly available data, all the data on the internet. So if you look at ChatGPT or Anthropic, Grok, Llama, what have you,
Anything?
they're all trained on all of the data on the internet. In other words, publicly available data. But for these models to reach their peak value, you need to not train them not just on publicly available data.
Still can't hear.
But you need to make privately owned data available to those models as well.
And this is going to be key, guys. Hopefully you can hear me now too. But getting private data, like all the public data from the internet has been scraped. The big differentiator is going to be private data. Okay, so massive. And this is Larry Ellison with Oracle talking about it. I also posted this, and Harry in 375 AI reposted it, but I'm going to play this part too.
True that the way AI models learn how to invest is not specifically just by going back, looking at past historical performance, and then coming up with strategies to try and trade that same strategy into the future. The people who are deploying this technology are smarter than falling for that trick. But it's also true that they are gathering other data in order to try and find an edge, whether that's satellite data, traffic data, ad spend data, consumer habits, prices, any data that is happening out in the real world in the economy that could potentially give you some sort of an indication of future outperformance or underperformance. That data is being compiled, analyzed, and acted on.
So this is something that Harry Dewhurst. So the main thing, let me stop sharing these because I think there's just weirdness, it looks like, in the comments. Look, the main thing is that this data set, as AI models need new data, these privatized data sets that are differentiated, that are different than any other data set out there, are going to be immensely valuable. And their app is another way. He talks about in that video, pricing data. Okay, think about the things they're going to be able to do with their app, right? They can collect receipt values. They can, if you're taking pictures of products on shelves, you get pricing data there. But the big thing is traffic patterns. Okay, understanding which cars are going to which retail locations. No one else is going to have cameras in the same place that they do. Okay, it's a differentiated data set. So data is truly going to be the new oil. You talk about compute, sure, AI compute resources, that's going to be incredibly valuable. So I spend a lot of time talking about those investments. Data to train these models that give quant traders an edge, that give these hedge funds an edge in their AI models. Guys, it's going to be so important. There's going to be so many different ways to leverage. And I have to say, I think we have a short window here, like a few years before AI kind of takes over and it gets a lot harder to make money. And it's unfortunate, but that's just where we are. And that's why, I know there's a lot of people that in the crypto communities want to sit around and just hate and talk about why not to invest in things. I would encourage people to look for reasons to invest in things and focus on that, because I don't think there's a whole lot of time for us to have an edge before AI makes it a lot harder for the normal average everyday person to make money in this economy, man. And I think that those times are coming a lot faster than people realize. So I would encourage people to focus on ways to make money instead of ways to hate on projects. I feel like a lot of people spend way too much time on that. Looking at 375 AI, sitting at 1.789 right now. Obviously, the low is at 0.008. Man, anyone that bought there, congratulations. Congratulations. We've got market cap under 3.8 million. That is pretty freaking awesome, man. I have been accumulating. I finally hit my accumulation goal, by the way. I'm still adding on the dips, but to me, this is like one of the most obvious asymmetric bets in all of crypto right now. The other one I'll call out here we have Silencio. Interestingly, I had a conversation earlier with somebody that was talking to another group that is selling data, voice data in particular. And they're talking about the amount of money they can man. They're getting $25 to $100 an hour per hour of audio. And they're like, the demand is crazy right now for training these AI models. Now, obviously in the US, English is, as far as reading a script, not as important as, real information. It's understanding emotions now, but a lot of other languages around the world, like they are just kind of getting started in training. So huge deal. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Silencio, at least for the next year or two here. And, when you look at the fact that they are burning tokens and their market cap is literally $1.8 million. Market cap matters. I don't care what people say. The best investments where I've hit my 100Xs is finding projects that are generally under 5 million market cap in times like these where the markets are suppressed, that have good teams, have a path to revenue, and are hitting on some type of narrative that's going to hit. Training AI and data on both of these guys. So massive opportunities there, in my opinion. One other thing I want to call out here is Akash Network. And this is something that came up with this conflict with Iran. They attacked a data center, one of AWS, an AWS data center in particular. And we saw that services were taken down. This is something that I would expect we'll see more of when we see conflict, global conflict, whether it's taking out internet service, whether it's taking out these data centers. As we become more reliant on that can be very disruptive. I think some of these decentralized compute projects can do quite well. Greg Asuri with Akash is working on just that. So pretty huge there. And we look at some of the things they're doing. They are about to launch their Burn and Mint Equilibrium. They're in their final testing stages. So huge stuff there. And you look at their current market cap, a little bit higher market cap at $87.6 million. But, what's interesting is you compare it to something like Render. I think Akash has the same revenue as Render, but sitting at $87 million market cap versus what is Render sitting at? $719 million. I think to me, Render does a really good job of marketing. They have a lot of big investors. They've got a lot of big names on their board, but I have a hard time justifying where they're at based on their revenue metrics, frankly. So let's see here. I want to cover a few items, some spaces I'm going to be on. I'm going to be on Sky Space tonight. I met her out in ETH Denver. So that will be at 8 p.m. Central Time. Obviously on with Liz, I was on her space, co-host on Mondays and on Thursdays. So I'll be on her space on Thursday again. Crypto Empress, I'll be on Thursday. She has a space. I'll be on her space 2 hours after that. So I think it is 2 p.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. for the Liz space. Sunday, I'm going to be on a space with this Dan Yells guy. So I'm going to be, you see here, I'll be a special guest there. Tyler and I do our monthly market updates. Normally it's the first Sunday of the month, so it'll either be this Sunday or next Sunday. So we'll hammer that out. It's normally like an hour and a half, 2 hours, just kind of shooting the shit, talking about market updates. So excited about that. So got a lot of different spaces. Got a lot of interviews with some founders coming up here. I'm excited about as well. So I've got 3 of those lined up that I'll be recording here in the next couple of weeks. So plenty of stuff coming out. And guys, there's a lot of ways to make money out there. So pretty exciting stuff. Let's see if I missed anything in the comments. Energy and data. Yep. Energy and data, man. It is so critical. Let me put myself back up there. Let's see what we got. That is where energy, data, compute, all of that is, I think, huge, and robotics, huge opportunities across the board, man. No doubt about it. What else do we have here? We got a lot of comments. Can we get an ETH price prediction? A lot higher in the future, buddy. I said this on one of the spaces. If you got in at 0.008, I think there's a high likelihood that you're sitting on 100x opportunity there. Obviously you have to be a little patient for the market to come back, but you think about that. They don't have that many token unlocks coming up. Like their vesting for their team and employees doesn't hit until October. It's a 3-year vest. So they don't have a lot of dilution. That is a key part of this. You look at some projects that have a lot of dilution coming up. That has to be a factor for you. I mean, it is a little bit restrictive on upside. So yeah, I mean, I think 0.008, I would not be at all surprised if we see a year or two from now that end up being 100x based on what they're doing. Someone did a Griffin. I mean, back in like the meme coin meta, whenever every meme coin was running like crazy. Yeah. These AI agents don't do dick for regular people. I don't care what it does for regular people. I care that they have devs and they are generating revenue. I'm not using them. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to set up AI agents. I'm sure I could take courses and learn enough to be dangerous with it, but I would rather focus on what I'm really good at, which is macro, which is analysis of undervalued deep in projects, finding alpha in markets. Done very well. Made a lot of money doing that. I don't want to take the time away to learn how to code, but I will find devs that are really freaking bright that know how to do it and invest in the project they're building. I'll do that. So I think you guys are thinking about the wrong things. People get focused on the wrong things. Let's see here. Bricks will use XRP. Nah. Bricks is already talking about using the unit. So they're talking about doing on Cardano. We'll see how that plays out though. What else we got here? We got a lot of comments. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, buddy. Win back in and deep in. Man, I'll tell you what, guys. There's a lot of negativity in there. And just too much hating. I wish that there's a lot of bright people in there. I wish that you all were focused on like finding opportunities instead of like spending time creating 10 alt accounts and just spending your whole day dogging on projects. That's just not very productive. So I decided it was no longer productive for me to be in there. Let's see. Caspa. I don't have any investment in Caspa. What else we got here? Yo. What's up? We got there's an example of a hater. People spend their whole day hating on people. It's funny. We talk about Hive Mapper. He said Hive Crapper. Look, Hive Mapper, they're in a tough situation, man. They had a lot of dilution to team and investors. Their token has been down. So like, what do they do? Obviously right now, I don't think the rewards, it's really hard to get people to deploy the camera with the current rewards. They've expended 25% of their community rewards. They could ramp up rewards to entice more people to map again. But, with the market sentiment where it is, and if they don't have enough revenue to offset that, then you're kind of in a pickle, right? Where that's going to just be more sell pressure. And it's kind of this circular thing. I think they put themselves in a position where they're almost reliant on market conditions just getting better and sentiment getting better. And that's a tough spot to be in my opinion. And I think personally that Gabe really screwed that project, is my opinion. So not to say it can't, but I think that they are relying on things that are a little bit outside of their control, which sucks. It's not necessarily a place that you want to be. Chicago. It's cold. Yeah, it is cold. You guys are such haters on Quez. It's funny to me. That dude's living rent free in your guys' head. All right. The future of DePIN, is it done? No, man. I think the days of selling hardware for a profit without a real business strategy and without connecting the fundamentals to revenue, those days are over. And you might see, I mean, look, the market's going to like rebound like it always does. We've been in these situations where everyone says it's dead and sentiment's horrible. And eventually, things turn around and we break out of it. A lot of these projects are going to fail though, like the bullshit ones. I think that DePIN's maturing though. I think what we saw in the past where you would have, I remember Helium got to like almost a $5 million market cap with like $7,000 a year in revenue. Those days are done. That's my opinion. I don't think we're going to see those days anymore. But if you have a path to meaningful revenue and you have that tied to the fundamentals of your token through open market buys to support the token price, I think those projects can do quite well. In particular, the ones that are also very thoughtful about not having too much dilution up, in the early stages. So, GeoNet is one that, I think they have a halving event in June. They've got a solid revenue trajectory. Their team is committed and not looking to like freaking sell off their tokens. You've got a CEO, Mike Horton, that is also looking to expand them into the drone space. There's a huge opportunity there for them. And he also like doesn't need the money. Like he's passionate about it, but he's made his money. Like he could be retired right now. That's the type of project that I think can do well in the longer term. When you look further out, the flywheel effect happens, right? Where emissions keep getting cut, revenue keeps going up. They have 80% of revenue going to open market buys and burns. At a certain point, an inflection point hits, right? And then math takes over. So I think that we will get there. You guys know how I feel about 375 AI. I think a lot of people don't just have a hard time wrapping their head around the vision there, but this is a team that's sold hundreds of millions of dollars of data, and they have ins with huge brands. They've got a lot of connections to get that data in front of the right people. And they will have a unique data set at the perfect time where you have that type of data. The type of data they're collecting is going to be so valuable. And at a time where these AI models are becoming an everyday part of our lives and very much intertwined with, a lot of different sectors. That type of unique data, real world data is a huge differentiator. So I think they're at the perfect place at the right time, in my opinion, with the right team to execute on it. Silencio, great pivot, right? They now have a path to a lot of revenue under a $2 million market cap. I do like Rover still. I mean, you'll notice if you watch my videos, though, the upside becomes capped the longer it takes for the market to turn around because they have so much dilution coming up. So, when I put out my video back in like November, I believe it was like, look, if things turn around very quickly, there's a lot of upside. We could have kind of like, remember that Hivemapper moment where it was before the dilution hit, they got the exchange listing, sentiment in the market was like kind of went parabolic. The longer that gets drawn out before we have things turn around, the more dilution there is, the less upside, in my opinion. So I think Rover still has upside, but it's diminishing over time as far as how many multiples it can do, in my opinion. Let's see what else. What other projects? I think some of these compute projects can really do well, man. I don't know, like Nosana, I found it at just under a $2 million market cap. That one did 350x back in 2024. I don't know that I see any of those right now. Nosana is sitting at, even at its $18 million market cap right now. That's still 9 times where it was at that point. So I don't know if I see that type of upside, but I think there's still a lot of upside if you're in the right compute projects, especially as the energy situation on the grid becomes more of a focal point, and we see more inference. I think so. Trying to think what other projects have tokens out there that I'm looking at. Aoki, they are on the verge of being profitable, which is like something that's crazy in crypto. Solid team. They have real customers generating real revenue. So I think that they can do well. But there are only, this is exactly right. There are only a handful of deepened projects with hope. Like, I think helium could get to the point where they're probably profitable. I think that's what they're trying to get to right now. And their revenue's in the right trajectory. But like, aside from that, man, I think a lot of these projects, they raised money when it was easier to raise money. If they're not generating enough revenue to offset their burn rate, it's going to be really hard for them to raise capital this year. So if they're running out of runway, some of these that have been around for a while, I think we're going to see a lot more shut their doors here pretty soon. Unless they have the revenue to offset their burn rate. But the idea of just like continue to raise more and more capital to, keep building up an idea of what could be, these conditions are not very good if that's your business strategy. And that was a lot of deepened projects. So, yeah, to your point, I think there's only a handful that I have any interest being invested in at this point. And I think this next wave, though, a lot of those ones I mentioned are pretty new projects. I think this next wave of projects, there's some serious winners. And I think some of these can go absolutely bananas when the market recovers. It's very similar to what we saw in 2022 and 2023, in my opinion, like seeing some of these really oversold, but you got to do the research and really find the right ones. The shotgun approach of just like buying everything and expecting everything to go up, that's done. Those days are way over. You got to be a little bit more sophisticated now, in my opinion. It's going to get harder and harder. As the sector matures, and this is a good thing, right? As the sector matures, it's going to be harder and harder to find asymmetric bets. The market cap increases. You're going to have to find the pockets. I don't know that we're going to see like these situations like we saw ever again in 2020, 2021, where they printed trillions of dollars because of COVID and there was a lot less projects. Everything just like surged. I think it's going to change quite a bit. But I also think with the amount of money, especially if the Clarity Act gets passed, I think that there's going to be a massive amount of potential if you're in the right stuff and you really have your pulse on the market. So that's kind of my view. Name some that might shut their doors. I mean, stuff that I'm not invested in. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing I have like that's like verifiable intel or anything, but you just look at some of these projects where the token has just been down, down, down. They don't have revenue. They've been around for a long time. Like, it's not that hard to connect the dots, in my opinion. It's not like they can just go out and raise capital right now. I'm talking to some of these founders who are like, yeah, like it's a good thing we're in the position we're in because going out and getting investors in this space is very, very difficult at the moment. So you got to run an actual business. More institution, less retail. That's what he said. Yeah, the institutional money is not in Deepin yet. I think that could come. What's interesting though is the stock market's being held up by retail right now. You see like the amount of selling that's happening is really internal selling. Like the people that work for these companies, these publicly traded companies, are selling at unprecedented rates. Retail is continuing to buy. So there's money out there. They just haven't been in crypto because after October 10th, why would you take on the extra risk if it's not paying, right? It's been down only for a year and a half. Like, why would you incur that extra risk? Like, the risk premium is to get better returns. That hasn't been there. And the stock market's been giving plenty of returns. There's a lot of opportunities there. So I think that'll change. I think the Clarity Act could help. But we got to get rid of some of the BS, man. There's still a lot of projects and L1s that don't get used that are over $1 billion market cap. That's got to go. Like, we got to get rid of some of this crap that's out there to clear the way for the real projects, in my opinion. So I think it'll happen naturally. Well, that's what I got, guys. I think at least I got the audio stuff figured out now. So Restream, I'm going to have to go and look at these other platforms to see how the stream came through. But appreciate you all. I will be on the spaces throughout the week. I'll have some streams throughout the week as well, and continue sharing my plays with you all. It will be interesting to see how things play out in the next couple of days now that things are kind of settling down. Well, I wouldn't say settling down. I think there's still risk and uncertainty that comes with Iran. We also saw that Trump tried to delay the repayment of the tariffs, and that got shot down by a judge today. So that's a whole nother level of uncertainty. We have all these lawsuits from companies that are suing the government to get, repaid the tariffs they had to pay to the government. That's going to be a freaking mess, man. So we have to see how it all works out. What did he do? Brother, he stepped in and killed the rewards and killed the momentum they had, in my opinion. Like, it was pretty bad. And then you had like the hardware delays and everything on top of that. So it's unfortunate, man. The glory days were fun, though. I'll tell you that much. All right, y'all. That's what I got for you. Have a wonderful evening. I will see you